Hey everybody, it's CheckTheEffects coming at you with another Minecraft tutorial, and today we're going to be going over item elevators. And this is in version 1.10.2 that we're going into this, and we're going through some of the item elevators that would work post 1.10. And this is with the more simple glass item elevators as well as your redstone dropper item elevators. So without further ado, let's get to the tutorial. So these are the designs we're going to be going through. The middle one is an old one that's there but doesn't work anymore as of 1.10.2. It actually doesn't work as of 1.9. Mojang made some changes to Minecraft mechanics when it came to these glass elevators that made it a little bit more difficult to actually use them properly. The simple old glass item elevators like this don't work anymore. The fence mechanic, it doesn't work anymore, so we can just toss that out the window for right now as of version 1.10.2. From 1.9 to 1.10.2, that is the case right now. So first of all, I'm going to demonstrate what goes on with most of these item elevators. So first of all, we're going to do is try and put some items into this chest and try to get them into this chest up here. And what you can notice is that you can end up with a certain level of item loss. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here and let that go. And because of the amount of speed that these things go out at, you will eventually notice that there are some items that just fly absurdly right out of the top. So I'm just going to also fly around here just to see if we end up with any that land on the ground, because these things, they just go crazy. Let's add a few more items in here. There we go. So we want to make it so that we will be dealing with ones that only are operating when they're in use. So this is one of the designs that you would typically have. So let's see how this works. And let's fast forward through this and see if we end up with all the items we had. So we had 64 of 2 stacks of blocks. So that was about 64 grass blocks and 64 polished granite. So let's take a look and see how many end up going into that chest. So as you can see here, we're at about 22 and 41 items here. The clock is still going, and as you can see, those are blocks that just got shot right through the top of the item elevator and went flying and ended up in the ground. These would be considered as lost items, that little block of grass and a block of granite over there. So that just proves my point, that a lot of Minecraft and Redstone engineers have been looking and have been noticing is that this new mechanic that causes items to shoot up at top speed. Yep, so another one just flew out. Actually, there's a few of them. So this mechanic that allows them to just fly up at top speed and go through practically anything is a serious problem when it comes to these glass item elevators. So we're just going to let these take their course and we'll be right back. So there we have, all the items have gone right through the system, and let's take a look at what we have here now. We have 57 polished granite and 57 grass blocks. So that just tells you there's a few that didn't make it. Out here I have 4 polished granite and 3 grass blocks that I did pick up off the ground, and the rest, you can see, are strewn all over the place. So they get around pretty well. I think we got one. There's another grass block over here, and yeah, it gets pretty messy. So let's see if I have enough now. If I go ahead and look at if I go ahead and get this here, open this up, and let's see how many we have left. 63 and 62. So I'm missing 1 granite block and 2 grass blocks. So here's 1 grass block that's there. Now, seeing as this is busted, I went on my own and decided to make my own design, on my own take, on an item elevator that would actually work with glass, as well as going back and finding out a dropper design, an original dropper design, that would actually go all the way to the sky. So sky is the limit in this case. So and I managed to do just that with 3 different designs. First, I'd like to start with the dropper version because this was the very first one that I did. And this design is actually an older design that I did quite some time ago, but never really got to actually having it on my channel. So let's go ahead and put some items in here. So I'm going to go ahead and stick 64 of this, 64 of that, and then 64 of this. And what's going to happen here is the items get put into this dropper. And this is not being, this is just one that I happen to find around here. I'll just toss that out. So what happens here is that the items from the chest go into the hopper and then go to this bottom dropper. All the droppers are going face upward. You have a comparator over here that feeds a signal out and into this comparator clock over here. As you can see it working away. This comparator clock basically toggles this vertical redstone signal transmission system that's here as basically an upward signal transmission for redstone, and that causes all of the droppers in this pipe to toggle. Now the problem with previous versions of this was that not all the items would manage to get out there because you were testing only one dropper. In this case, we're testing every 4th dropper, and then if there is an item in that 4th dropper, then there's a signal that is sent downward, back down all the way to the comparator clock, and that keeps the system alive. Now this is why every 4th one will, because of the way this is designed, is that this will essentially they'll have an item that gets shot up into this dropper and then into this dropper, and then the item will get shot up from this dropper up to this dropper and then into this one. So that's essentially how it works. So as it passes through, you'll see that the item that the comparators will then start to turn on, and I can see here now it looks like it's almost done. Like it's finished right now, and you can see we have all our blocks are in here. It looks like I might have put an extra one that's in there. So let's go ahead and put that again one more time. Let's put just 64 stacks. Okay, and there it goes, ticking away. So the idea of this is to make sure that the clock at the bottom stays alive until the items go all the way through into this chest at the top. Now you can replace this chest with a hopper pipe and send that off into another chest or whatever. And you'll see that as the items finish up, the comparators will slowly start to lose power one at a time in sequence. So let's just fast forward this and let's watch this happen. And there we go. All the items have gone up to the top. And if you click on here, there we go. There is your polished andesite and your granite blocks, all 2 stacks. So there we go. And the nice thing about this system is that it does not rely on any glitches, which is what the glass ones did. It is completely based on redstone mechanics, and this one surely will not break in any future updates, unless they actually make a change to hopper mechanics. Now for the new glass designs that have been coming out for version 1.9 and up, I've been finding that they're not exactly server friendly. The majority of them involve moving parts and constant redstone updates that would cause a server to lag severely if they're constantly in a chunk. So what I decided to do is come up with a solution that only turns on when it's in use and doesn't have any other redstone updates occurring whenever it's not in use. So these are server-friendly versions of the glass item elevator that would be version 1.9 and up friendly. So the first one is a design that I made actually quite some time ago, well before 1.9 ever came out. Actually, this is in 1.7 or 1.6 that I designed this one. But I never got this up on YouTube if I remember correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I put my items in here. And what you're going to see is all this does is basically send all the items into that little empty space that's in there. So there's no glass in front of the dropper. There is just an empty space, and then it's surrounded by the solid blocks, and then you have this tower of glass to send the items up in. Now what's happening here is the comparator that has its back to the dropper, it will, if there's items in it, it'll have a signal that comes out and gets boosted by this repeater. The repeater's current is then sent off down this line and into this line into this comparator clock over here, and for as long as the comparator clock has power, it'll keep on ticking, powering this block over here and causing this comparator to keep on dispensing items. Also, it has a power that goes over to this section here and powers this block over here, which keeps this redstone torch turned on so long as there are items inside that dropper. Then what happens is, when the whole thing turns off, then the redstone torch will turn on and power the STP, the comparator STP that's over down there, and that will send a pulse into a sticky piston and then sends the items up into this break area that's here. So as you see, the power went in, and then you had a pulse coming out from the comparator into this repeater, which directed it right into a sticky piston that's right below, which pushed the items up through the glass up into this break area. Now what I mean by break area is like what I like to call a water break, is that you have something that looks like this, but a little bit more further down. So you have water that is over the hoppers, and then you have a pair of signs, and then some water that's over the hoppers. So looking in here, we can see that we have both my grass blocks and my polished andesite, which I put in at the beginning. Now to see what the water break looks like, there you have it. And you see there is, if I go in here, you have the hoppers, then a water block, then a sign, and then a water block, and then you have a solid block right above it, like so. And this will cause the items to go back safely in the hopper, despite the high level of speed that the items are shoved up through the glass. Now, this old design of mine had something to be desired, and that was that as long as you don't mind waiting for the items to be, all of them to be dispensed from the chest through the hoppers and then into this dropper, into that little square, then it's not really a big deal if you don't mind waiting for a long period of time. But what if you have to deal with a lot of items? Then that could be a bit of a problem, especially since they'll start to get pretty crowded in that little hole. So I came up with this mechanism that's over here. So you have the same basic design over here as far as the principle for shoving the items up through the glass is concerned, as well as the same old brake mechanism for the water brakes, but we have a whole new beast that's here for the redstone over here. And let's take a look and see how this works. So I'm going to put my grass and my polished andesite blocks in there, and there you go. Items go in, and then they get shoved up. Items go in, and then they get shoved up. So if you look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then boom, it gets sent up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then boom, it gets sent up. So what's happening here is that we're actually creating a delay, or actually sending the items up 6 at a time this time, rather than having all of them go up at once. So in this thing, what we have is the comparator that ends up sensing off of this dropper, sends a signal that's boosted into this through this repeater into this block, and then the block then allows the power to go down into this comparator STP. The comparator STP then sends the signal into this comparator delay mechanism, and what that happens is you have a pulse that's sent through, and picked up by these comparators. Now when the comparators are wired in this circular manner, what happens is that the signal stays with them for a certain amount of time, where the more comparators you have, the longer the signal will stay. But eventually this signal will fade. So all the current eventually slowly fades, and then what happens is you have, as long as this block is free from power, this repeater then has the power boosted from it and into this comparator clock, which then sends the current through here into this block, which then has a redstone torch which powers this block. And whenever that toggles and the redstone torch over here toggles, that causes your dropper to also turn on and off and dispense items. Also, while this thing is having power, this redstone torch is turned off. But when the power goes out, the redstone torch is turned on, and then there's a signal that goes into this comparator STP. That power is then transmitted in through here, through this block, and into this sticky piston, which then shoves the item straight up. Also, it sends the current into this block, and when it does do that, this redstone torch turns off. And when the pulse is turned on again, when the pulse is finished and it's gone through, so that there's no more power going in this block, then you have this torch turning back on again. Now what happens is when this turns off, this redstone torch ends up turning on, and then powers this redstone repeater, which sends a redstone current back into the comparator here, the one that's testing for items in this dropper, and makes it turn off. When it does turn off, then what happens is the current that's over here also turns off. But remember that this is just a pulse, so the comparator here will basically turn off and then on again, and then that sends a second pulse through the comparator STP over here, and then this cycle just repeats over and over again until there are no items left in the dropper. Now let's go ahead and look up here. We had 2 stacks, if I remember correctly. Yep, we have 2 stacks, one of polished andesite and one stack of grass blocks. Nothing lost. And again, we're using the same water breaks that are here. If I go ahead and take this out, you can see here there's a water breaks here. You have a block, you have your hoppers, and then your water block, then sign, and then a water block, and then a solid block right on top. So there you have it. Those are the 3 item elevators that I've come up with that work with version 1.9 and up with the new mechanics that are there. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial / explanation on the 3 new item elevator designs that I've come up with myself. You can go ahead and use these in your own builds. If you're interested in a step-by-step walkthrough on how to build these, I will be going through them in 3 individual separate videos. I decided to put that separately because each of these would be their own beast on their own, so that's why I'm going to be doing 3 separate videos for each item elevator design that's here. So please look forward to that. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe, and if you want to leave a comment, please do so in the comment section below. Just make sure to leave it clean. This is Check the Effects signing off. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.